Artificial intelligence is everywhere right now. If you watch any business news channel, AI stocks dominate the headlines. However, inside many organizations, the gap between AI hype and real outcomes is still pretty wide. Hello, everyone, and welcome to Lemongrass Live. Today, we're going to talk about how to narrow that gap in two ways. First, how to identify meaningful AI use cases, and then secondly, how to build the business case that secures leadership buy-in. My name is Doyle Tipler. I'm a solution architect here at Lemongrass, and I'm joined by two excellent panelists, Jake Echenove, who is a global solution and enterprise architect lead with deep expertise in SAP and SAP and enterprise AI. And then also Joanne Cordon, principal advisor and enterprise architect with experience delivering large-scale migrations, transformation, and AI projects. Here's how we're going to run today's session. We'll start with the problem statement and then move into identifying the right use cases and then transition to building the business case and then finally finish up with some practical advice. So let's get started. So let's start with the problem. And Jake, maybe this is for you. Why is it so hard for organizations to move from AI interest to meaningful impact?
Yeah, thanks, Doyle. AI is definitely getting interest, right? It's certainly in a hype cycle. Similar things have happened with other technologies such as cloud. But what we're seeing in a lot of businesses is that it's very maybe grassroots. So people are using it individually to create content, perhaps in the marketing area, or to help generate Excel spreadsheets in the finance area, things like that, right? So it's not looking at overall business impact. So what really should happen is that leaders need to kind of identify some clear use cases where they understand where AI can support, and really understanding what AI can and can't do is important, because sometimes there's unrealistic expectations on what the technology can deliver. But even beyond that, there's some foundational elements that need to occur to have a meaningful impact from an AI perspective. You need to have strong, solid data, can't be fragmented, can't be dirty. And then you have to have an AI specific strategy. It's not just a business strategy, but anytime you implement a new technology, you have to have specific guidelines around usage, security measures in place, and governance, because you can't have skunkwork projects where people are just leveraging AI willy-nilly without any sort of framework around it, because that could ultimately be bad for the business, right? Because it could implement some sort of security holes or unwillingly or unknowingly release data that you want to keep in-house. So sometimes also people see it as a threat as opposed to a tool. There's all this talk about AI taking people's jobs. You really shouldn't look at it in that way. You really should think about, how do you adopt this best of breed tool to make my job easier or make me more effective in the job. And sometimes businesses just jump into pilots without any sort of clear outcomes or business alignment. So it's very important that leaders define what success looks like before they decide if AI is the right tool for the job. Joe?
Yeah, completely agree, Jake. I've heard many business leaders saying we want AI, which is fantastic, the enthusiasm, but often it's difficult to articulate why they need AI and where in the business they need that AI. For example, is it in your planning area? You know, are you looking to increase the efficiency, the accuracy of your forecasting, for example? Are you looking to speed up your procurement, your source of supply selection process, or more accurate delivery dates, for example? Are you looking at predicted delivery dates in purchase orders? So it's often, you know, where do we want to increase the efficiency or the effectiveness, for example? What is the reason for wanting AI? I completely agree on that one. Also, some business leads just have this idea in their heads, and the enthusiasm is there and it's in line with the company's strategy. But I think in some cases the challenge is actually getting buy-in from the leads in the business, getting buy-in from the C-suite, for example, having that story to tell, being able to quantify some of those potential outcomes of implementing AI. I think one other area, Jake and Doyle, where I do see some challenges is sometimes a business might see a need for improvement, and they're absolutely right, but they might be sort of not sure on the actual technology. They might think it's AI, but when you dig deeper with an expert there, it actually might turn out to be something else. And just as one example there, you know, a business once, when talking to me, wanted something to alert them when stock reduced to a certain threshold, and they thought they needed AI. And when we actually probed, it was a simple solution that they needed, which was a simple automation when stock reduced to a certain level with alerts and notifications. So I think it's about getting that right, the reason for the AI. And also diving a little deeper into it and questioning, do you really need AI, or is it actually something else? I think also tying it into the narrative. So what do you want? Why do you want it? What's the vision for the future, and how to actually get there? So how will we get there? What AI will we use, for example? Yeah, so that's what I would say there, Jake, on that one.
I like your point about differentiating between automation and AI, 'cause I think that comes up often. And then also it sounds like you guys are both sort of saying, you know, stay away from sort of the solution looking for a problem sort of narrative, if you will, right? The intent is there, but without clarity, nothing, you know, sort of gets off the ground.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. So start with the business problem, but not to be too negative. Sometimes it's not just about putting out fires. It's also about being kind of opportunistic and saying, well, we may think that this part of the business is running fine, but what room for improvement is there? And you'll be surprised when you talk to different business leads, different layers of the organization, some fantastic ideas come out. Some people may have seen a piece of AI somewhere or read about that AI, and they see that opportunity to improve. I think, you know, have proactive sessions with business leads, and do it with a range of different levels as well in the organisation. Do a value and benefits exercise. Ask the company, what sort of benefits do you want to achieve from this? Is it efficiency? Is it user experience, for example? Is it customer or vendor relationships? And some of the, just as well to point out, I've found this a lot in my experience as an architect, but sometimes some of the best innovations are actually surprises. So often I've seen it where companies will say, you know, everything's going fine in the procurement space, or we don't need anything extra here. But when they see some of the new things that come along, whether it's a new way of reporting or a way of automating something, it can actually surprise them, and they say, how on earth did we work without this?
Yeah, I think when we're looking for AI use cases that make sense, all of that's clear. I think that's very good points, Joanne. But I kind of look at it into two perspectives in the way that you want to adopt the artificial intelligence. One is operations, making your internal ops more efficient, more effective, streamlining processes. That's one area where AI can be very beneficial. And the other area is more business processes, business value, where you can maybe accelerate sort of your new things that you're bringing to market, or bring up new ideas. So there's kind of those two avenues. But whichever one you choose, you got to put a good framework in place. It's very important that you have processes in place. For one, you need clarity. You need to very clearly define the objective. What are the expectations and the outcomes by implementing this AI capability that you expect to come out? You need context. Where does AI fit in the process? Many people in the tech industry have read the Phoenix Project, and there's this concept of the theory of constraints. And really what it's talking about is, in any sort of process, if you're not solving the problem at the bottleneck, it's essentially an illusion. You don't get any benefits. So you need to really identify where AI fits in the overall process to make sure that you're solving something that's going to provide value into the overall process. And connection, we've touched on this a little bit, but it's very important to tie that to measurable business outcomes. It could be a process complete faster, your month-end closing doesn't take as long, it drives down labor hours. There's all sorts of various metrics that can help derive if it's a benefit to the company, but you need to ensure you know what that connection is. And then commitment. So I kind of laid out 4C's framework. That last one, commitment, is getting commitment from the leadership. Maybe you want top-down type of approach. So you get support within the business if you need any sort of resources to support the project, any sort of funding to support the project. Having that commitment from the top down is going to ensure that you can drive those AI projects to a success. And I'll give one example. I deal mostly in the ops type area. So you've heard this terminology of AI ops, which is essentially solving problems automatically or preemptively within an environment, because you can recognize patterns and then execute activities to solve those things before they arise. So that's one area in the ops world where AI could be of benefit. Joe, can you talk about a little bit about measurable impact and how you can ensure AI is improving processes?
Absolutely, and I think it is all about measurable business outcomes. And I think if you're going to get off the ground with a new AI initiative, you need to land those sorts of measurements and quantifiable ways of talking as well. So just as an example, with predictive demand planning, for example, you might say to your C-suite, we could improve accuracy by 30%, you could say. But what else will that impact? You could also say, well, we could reduce the impact of, we could reduce our stock outs by 15%, for instance, or reduce our inventory holding costs by 10%. So those are the sorts of figures that will resonate with the C-suite. Again, another example, so predicted delivery dates in the purchase order. So the system actually predicting the most likely delivery date based on certain factors that it's learned over time. And that sort of thing can reduce the number of surprises you have. It can increase, for example, improve your production schedule adherence to, say, 20%, for example. So these sorts of figures are ones which the business can really get behind.
That's good. I love the examples there, and Jake laid out, I think it was the 4C's: clarity, context, connection, and commitment. But it was kind of interesting how, Joe, you wove in sort of a fifth C around criteria, which is measurable impact. So I think that's good feedback for our audience. So let's maybe flip from the solution looking from a problem into a problem-first mindset that's backed by data, and then obviously focus on outcomes. But let's maybe move into, so now we've sort of clarified the problem statement and put some guardrails around it, identifying the use cases. How do you turn those into convincing business cases? And maybe Jake, we'll start with you on this one.
That's the key. We've talked a little bit about AI use cases, but how do you put together a business case to help support an AI-driven initiative? So you need to always anchor on the business strategy. You're going to have business processes. You're going to be looking at a very broad strategic framework. So start with that in mind. What are the outcomes that you want for your business? And then you need to think about, what does leadership care about? Do you want to grow revenue? Are you trying to reduce cost operationally? You want to reduce risk in the environment? And then you hear a lot of talk these days about sustainability. So those types of objectives that leadership cares about, you really need to align any AI use case or business case to achieve those specific objectives. If you're going to get leadership buy-in, you need to really speak the language of the C-suite. So you're talking about revenue impact, operational efficiencies, customer experience is huge, and there's a bunch of different type of business cases that can be made, but they really need to align to what your overall business strategy is. That's the key. Ultimately, you're going to dive down into use cases, and we'll talk a little about a specific use cases next here. But we've talked a lot about this. How do you quantify the value and the risks? Is it hours saved in developing certain programs, or is hours saved in developing content? Is it avoided costs because you don't have as much labor costs to perform certain activities because you can have AI perform those activities? All these productivity gains, reduced errors, faster cycle times for innovation, all of that type of activity needs to be measured at a baseline. What is it today? And then if you implement any sort of AI that builds into the use case, and you can expect a percentage savings in certain areas, or percentage improvement in certain areas, potentially saving millions of dollars, depending on what that business case is. But becoming top down from the strategic approach, and then really diving into the details and how it helps you build that business case to move forward. Now, one thing that's probably part of the business case is the risk of inaction. We know that AI adoption is at an amazing rate across all industries. So as a business, you want to always improve. And if your competitors are adopting AI in a way that's making them be more cost effective, drive down costs to their customers, or providing additional value to their customers, you don't want to be left behind. You want to take advantage of that technology. You know that the competition is moving fast in certain ways. So there is certainly a large risk of inaction, and that should really be supported in the business case, right? So one of the things, you can always try and quantify and measurables, but there's also things that are a little bit more difficult to quantify, and how you put them in a business case, and faster time to value, faster innovation cycles. Sometimes you can put some numbers around it, but it's not always the case, because you get a lot of value to the overall business by implementing some technologies like this. But again, aligning to the business strategy is really important to make sure it provides an overall business case. So the business value and the benefits framework, you need to prioritize, plan, and then track that return on investment to make sure that anything you implement is actually supported by those numbers. Joe, what's your take?
Great points, Jake. And I think you touched upon it. The numbers matter, of course, but the story can matter just as much as well when you're creating a compelling business case. What's the problem we're solving first and foremost? What's the vision of that better future? What will that look like? And what is the path towards getting towards that? And we touched upon it earlier as well, I think, Jake, the voices, the people that are involved in this. You've got your COO wanting efficiency gains, you have the CFO wanting to see return on investment. The numbers will show that, but the story is just as important. Let's not also forget the end users. They're the ones who will be using those tools every day. They're the ones whose daily lives will be affected and improved by the AI, helping them to reach those goals. So all of those voices are very important, and the story needs to include everybody to get that buy-in, and a story that will resonate with all ears in the room as well. So I think one thing to note as well, it's very tempting to jump in. You might have a big list of potential AI cases, prioritize with urgency and impact, and watch your low-hanging fruit. But always with this sort of thing, when you're just starting out, start with a pilot, start with something smaller. And once you have success with that pilot, it becomes a credible case which will convince those around you that this is something to get on board with, and you can then start to branch out onto other pieces of AI. For example, just what I mentioned before, predicted delivery dates in your purchase orders. Start off with that, show how that can improve your accuracy of goods coming in on time. How you minimize surprises and you're able to stick to that production schedule. Once you get that buy-in, you might then branch out and start to use your predictive forecasting in your planning area, for example. And I think it's about connecting that promise of AI as this great thing, actually connecting it to the reality of your business.
I really like, Jake, the point you brought out about the risk of inaction. I think that's a really good kind of point. It made me think of, is it FOMO, the fear of missing out, right? But you want to make sure, to Joe's point, that you put some context around that, and then have some pilots and some small, quick wins that sort of build that credibility. So yeah, good stuff, guys. So sort of moving into the next point, all good points, but it's not just the why. What about the how? Like what foundations do businesses need in place? And maybe for this one, we can tie it specifically to ERP as an example, since that's the space we sort of live in. How do companies pull AI into ERP?
Well, we'll try to sum that up in a couple of minute conversation, right? Because that is certainly a deep topic. We all know kind of why we should implement AI. We know it's kind of a game changer in terms of the amount of predictivity and benefits that it can include. But how there's always going to be some foundational elements, and it's the foundation of accuracy and quality of results that you get back from any sort of artificial intelligence is data. It's imperative that you have quality data as a foundation for anything that you're doing. We all hear these terms about hallucinations from AI. That could happen from a multitude of reasons, but one of the reasons is pulling from inaccurate or incorrect data and then giving back results that don't make sense, right? So that's one of the areas that we want to make absolutely clear. All these companies have a data strategy, and it's really about kind of making sure data doesn't explode, but you want to also ensure that data quality is at the top of the list for anything that you're going to have AI kind of consume from. So with that, you typically need a modern data architecture. So you're evolving from kind of maybe traditional data silos, and you have data that is combined from multiple different sources, but there's some cleansing and quality that goes along with that as you build those foundational elements. And in the ERP space, something that happens quite often is, you get an application that's pristine, there's no customizations, but as businesses evolve or modify that pristine core, whether it's SAP or Oracle or Dynamics or whatever ERP, there's always some customizations that happen at the foundation to make sure it aligns to the company business practices. That's just part of the deal, right? When you get it, that core doesn't always meet all these business practices. So particularly in the SAP world, you have years and years of customizations that equate to thousands of custom objects and even millions of lines of code that are in support those customizations, right? So how do you make sense of that? It's so insurmountable to think about, how do I take these millions lines of code, evolve it out of the core, and modernize that, and that sort of custom processes to be something that's more aligned to these clean core type principles. We'll talk a little bit about that next, but those foundational elements are very important before you implement AI, particularly in an ERP space.
Absolutely. And I think also not just AI, but all innovation is easier with that cleaner core. And clean core, it's not just, I think most people, when they think of clean core, they think of the amount of code, the amount of custom code in the system, but it's so much more. It's being on the latest version of your application, being fully patched up, making sure that you're using data in a standard way and you don't have lots and lots of bespoke fields, and you're using it in a way that it wasn't intended for. Also using the best practice processes of the application that you're using the latest sort of user experience and applications wherever you can. And that will set the stage then for those pieces of AI that you want to use will feel closer to a plug and play than if you had a lot of custom code to contend with.
Yeah, it's sort of, this topic sort of weaves nicely into our Lemongrass Cloud platform, Clean Core AI tool, right? It's where we're leveraging AI to help customers identify where their custom code is, how to sort of clean that core, and sort of prepare for AI at scale, I would say. So yeah, moving into the next point here, let's see. Now that we've discussed sort of how to build the business case, can we touch on some AI use cases that you've seen lately? And Jake, maybe first you could discuss an operational AI use case.
Yeah, and we've highlighted a couple of use cases during the conversation, but we'll dive into something that we're seeing bringing tremendous value to some of our customers already today, and it is really incorporating these best-of-breed LLMs in this foundational tool that we've built called Clean Core AI, which essentially analyzes customer environments and makes sense of what they have. I've mentioned previously about thousands of custom objects, millions of lines of code. And when a customer looks at that and say, how am I ever going to get to sort of a clean core environment? They don't even know where to start. So this tool, which we've taken the base LLMs and trained to be SAP aware, incorporating READMEs from S4, some knowledge base articles, coding best practices. So we train the model to be very much an SAP architect. With the power of AI, we're able to analyze these millions of lines of code and make sense of them. Not only do we identify these custom objects, but we create clusters. So we identify dependencies between all of these objects. So we understand if you delete one line of code that it may affect something over here. So it makes it easier to disposition all of these custom objects, basically putting them into categories. Can you retire these objects and get them out of the environment? There's numbers thrown around that up to 50 or 60% of custom objects within an SAP environment are never even used. So it's very easy to retire a large chunk of it, but you need to make sure that there's no dependencies. And there's things like revert to standard. As SAP's evolved and releasing more capabilities in S4, it's now able to adopt more business practices that customers in the past may have had to create unique for them. Now they can just revert to standard. And then there's things like repurchase. Maybe there's some SaaS offerings that are available now. And then you can do things like re-architect, perhaps to ABAP Cloud, and then even modernize to more of a different architecture using different programming languages. But ultimately, it makes that very tightly coupled environment more loosely coupled, more microservices like, and allow the customers to be more agile in their SAP environment. So that tool will help customers on that clean core journey to ultimately get to a more agile SAP deployment. Joe, how about from a business process case? I talked a little bit about operations, but maybe from a business process, I think you can talk a little bit about that.
There's so many great examples, Jake, from a business side. It's difficult to choose just one, and it covers so many different areas as well. But I think one that I particularly like is the idea of a kind of like a control tower or an AI central supply chain hub. And it's basically a way of forecasting sort of what to do when things go wrong. So it would be monitoring, for example, a shipment coming in and actually looking at real world data around, such as if there's a weather event or if there's a port strike, for example, and being able to anticipate and suggest an alternative. So imagine you're looking at this dashboard and it's saying this event has happened, and the tool's actually already simulated an alternative solution. It's already suggesting, why don't you bring the goods in from this alternative plant or an alternative supplier? And not only that, it actually gives you the sort of the costs and the maybe even the sort of carbon impact of that other choice. So having all of that data at your fingertips as a planner and being able to say, yes, I select this option or this option, the thought of that I find really exciting.
Awesome. So it sounds like we're getting through the meat of the discussion here today, and it's been a really great conversation with both of you. And so we're going to try to wrap this up a little bit. Maybe what's a point that you can leave the audience with, like one piece of advice? What would that be? And maybe we'll start with you first, Joe.
Sure, and I like the idea of frame it as a journey. You know, don't just try to jump straight to the destination. It's a journey. Look for some quick wins, but start slowly. Build that trust. Tell that story to the business. Build the trust, and get that sort of long-term plan in place for to get those benefits that you want. How about yourself, Jake?
It's so difficult to sum that up in a couple of sentences, right? We brought a lot of content today. It's such a powerful tool, but ideally, you know, start with AI. You start with your business outcome, and how can AI help provide that value? So start there and work backwards. And if the value is there, you know, AI is going to make the case. There's so many different opportunities there, but you just got to make sure you have some structure in place as you bring it towards the business.
Awesome. So great conversation today, great discussion. I want to thank again our panelists, Jake and Joe, for their insights here. It's been really good. And sort of to summarize this whole thing up a little bit, right? In order to make AI real, it sounds like you need three things, right? You need one, outcome clarity. Two, the right use cases, so identifying those right use cases. And then thirdly, a compelling leadership story that hopefully leads to leadership buy-in. So thank you all for joining us on Lemongrass Live. I think it's been a good discussion. I think we've done well on managing our time, but let's open it up for questions. I think we have time for maybe one or two questions, and I did prepare a question or two for our panelists. Let's see how they tackle this. Joe, you spoke earlier about short-term wins, like quick wins. How do you balance sort of those short-term wins with maybe longer-term AI transformational goals?
I think it comes down to priority. It comes down to capturing all of those desired benefits and business goals, tying it in with your wider organisational strategy, but then going through them and looking at them through an objective lens, a practical lens, and trying to prioritise in terms of what's more urgent, what's a quick win, look at the gains versus the costs. And again, you know, starting small, don't try to do everything at once. It's a journey, and take one step at a time and measure your impact. Actually go in and measure, you know, have the customer experience scores gone up? You know, has the accuracy of delivery data and adherence improved? And treat it that way, and over time that trust will be bought into, and you can move on to your next step in the journey.
Awesome. Yeah, good stuff. And maybe one question for you, Jake. What's the balance between building sort of in-house AI capabilities versus maybe reaching out to a partner to help you with that journey?
There is definitely a balance, I think, from two aspects. One, from the technology, right? Foundational LLMs have been built from OpenAI, from Google, and Anthropic and others, right? So leveraging that partnering technology and then training those models to solve the specific business requirements are important. But even from like a professional services aspect, I think it's key to understand who's an expert in specific areas, right? You know, there are vendors that have very much focused on supply chain or on operational efficiencies in the realm of AI ops and other areas. So getting best of breed tool sets and then incorporating them within your business structure, while also making sure that your teams, the business teams, are learning along the way, right? You don't just want to rely on a vendor, but you know, adopting best of breed tooling in vendors and then learning along the way. Then ultimately you can maybe take a lot of that on yourself and realize and understand how you can tailor some of those things for those business benefits. So certainly a balance between the two, and then you got to decide what's best for the business to see what makes the most sense for each business.
Cool. Yeah, good. So thank you guys again both, and thank you all for listening to Lemongrass Live. The topic today has been making AI real and how to build the business cases for AI. So hopefully we've left you with some food for thought on framing up that conversation in your organization. Please certainly reach out to us. You can contact us through our email here, info@Lemongrass Cloud. Send your questions on the topic. We would love to engage with you and get back to you. You can also scan the QR code on the screen. That'll get you to our Lemongrass services. We can talk about some advisory services that we provide on a multitude of topics. So once again, thank you guys very much.